Welcome to Inside Edition, where we discuss national, regional, and international issues in depth. In implementation of the directives of the Government Executive Committee headed by His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, to promote a fair competitive environment in line with the Bahrain Economic Vision 2030 through devising various initiatives and projects, and for the purpose of increasing the qualitative opportunities for the citizens, the Ministry of Industry, Commerce and Tourism has recently announced the launch of the Joint National Campaign Against Commercial Concealment in cooperation with Bahrain Chamber of Commerce and Industry. To know more about the campaign and its importance, we are pleased to be joined here in the studio by the Assistant Under Secretary for Commercial Registration and Companies at the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Tourism, Mr. Nibras Mohammed Talib, right after this. Welcome back. Joining me in the studio is the Assistant Undersecretary for Commercial Registration and Companies at the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Tourism, Mr. Nibras Mohammed Talib. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, first of all, we've seen a lot of the awareness campaigns that have started already in the country, whether they are signs on the roads or on the highway talking about commercial concealment, but not a lot of people know what it actually is. So can you give us and our viewers an idea about what commercial concealment is and who is considered a person who conceals and a person who is concealed?
Yeah, well, let me start off by saying that having your own business can be a beautiful thing, because you take your ideas, your passion, your hobby and turn it into something that you can earn and make a living out of. Yeah. And so it can be a very rewarding experience if done right and when everything falls into place as planned. Mm-hmm. But with every opportunity that comes, there are also risks. Mm-hmm. And especially when we talk about micro, small to medium-sized businesses, right. It's typical that the business that you have is intertwined with your life, and so if you do well in your business, it will reflect positively on your life, on right. your well-being and standards of living. And if something goes wrong, it can also negatively impact your business. And that's why they always say doing a business is taking a risk, and it's true. Right. And that's why they also say that to be successful, you have to approach your business with a calculated risk. Right. And that includes having a hands-on approach to your business, keeping an eye on your business at all times. Mm-hmm. And this is where commercial concealment comes in. Yeah. Because what it involves is giving someone access to your name, to your business, to do anything that they see fit for them to do without you being involved at all in the business. And that means you don't have your eyes on your business. Right. And that opens you to a lot of risk. Right. And that kind of translates again negatively, not on the business level, but also on the personal level, right. And it can lead to severe consequences. Right. Especially that in some cases, the people that rent these commercial registrations or whatever don't really know the laws. So they might be doing something illegal without actually knowing, and it is in the name of the original person. So what can you tell us about the concealment? What is considered a concealment in that regard? Yes, you're right. It is a possibility that they're not aware of what happens in their business. So as a business owner, we always stress on the point that you're taking risks, so you always have to be aware what right. you're getting yourself into. Mm-hmm. It is your right. You don't be afraid to ask and reach out to the government authorities to explain to you what it is, right. what it means to be a business owner. Right. And if we explain what commercial concealment is, mm-hmm. it's basically giving someone who is otherwise not eligible mm-hmm. to practice an activity mm-hmm. by using your name, by using your own data, by using your commercial registration in exchange for a fee, a monthly fee, without you being involved. So that's what commercial concealment is.
Right. So just to get more of a visual or a story behind it, can you give us examples of commercial concealment, whether they're real or hypothetical? What does it look like?
So assume you obtain a commercial registration and you choose a certain activity, such as simple as opening up a cold store. Mm-hmm. So you pay the fees, you register the commercial registration under your name, so now you're legally bound to this legal entity that you've created.
Right.
And so what happens then is that you would approach a person who is not eligible, because again, obtaining that license means that you've been vetted, you've been verified, and you've been checked against the requirements of those activity. So the government has given you the right for you to practice this activity.
Right.
Now, imagine the owner of the cold store goes to someone who's not eligible. They will have an agreement that is non-official. It's not on paper, it's not recorded anywhere. But what happens is that they will agree among themselves that in exchange for the actual commercial owner to give that commercial registration and the shop and the cold store to the other person, and that person would be giving the commercial owner a weekly, a monthly fee, and we've seen cases in which the fee is as low as 35 BD. Like the commercial owner is selling his name and his business
for 35.
and is assuming all of that risk for 35, as low as 35 BD. And so then that the other person, the person that has been concealing, is now operating the business, operating the cold store, selling to customers, entering into deals that the commercial owner is not aware of at all.
Right.
And so the deals that have been that are being made, the products that are being sold, the business owner, the actual owner is not aware if they satisfy the requirements, if they are up to standards, if they break any laws. And so what happens at the end of the day is that the person that is concealing might get into some kind of a legal problem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he can also disappear.
Right.
And just disappear, and all of a sudden the commercial registration owner finds himself in the middle of lawsuits, problems with having issues with government entities, and that's where the actual problem comes, is that the person that he concealed to, because he's not official in the papers, he's not official in the documents, he's the one that's going to have to report back to the government entity. He's the one who's going to probably go to court and face all of these issues that the other person has put him in.
So to boil it a bit down, so the point is basically that if a person goes out of his way to get a commercial registration, pays the fees, gets vetted, which is also not a strenuous process, but it is a process at the end of the day, he rents out that registration to someone else who, for instance, has any kind of reason why he cannot get a registration. And by doing that, basically, he puts himself in a position to be considered an illegal position that he could be penalized by the law.
Absolutely.
And the person that rented it out does not have as much of an issue because his name is not on any documents.
Absolutely.
So my question to you is, in considering these two people, the person that actually owns the registration and the person that is renting it from that person, who is more at fault legally, if you look at it?
It will be both of them. Legally, both of them. But who assumes all of the risk? It's the commercial registration owner.
Right.
As per the law, both the concealing person and the concealed person are subject to the law.
Yeah, perfect. And what is the penalty for commercial concealment?
We'll look at it both ways. There's a penalty that is associated more towards what the law states, and there's a penalty in terms of the effects that it has on his business and on his personal life. So when you talk about the penalties as per the law, first off, you start off by giving him a warning, because maybe he wasn't aware of the law and the regulations. And so there's flexibility and room in which the Ministry of Industry and Commerce and Tourism will inform him that what you're doing right now is against the law.
Right.
And they would give him a period of not less than 1 week in order for him to correct and make sure that he no longer is concealing his business.
Right.
So that's step number one. And then if he does not follow the regulations, and if he violates a second time, a third time, this is when we'll apply and it can be any of the two things, either a penalty of 1,000 BD, not exceeding 1,000 BD, or even going to jail. for no more than a year. So that's the current law. But the other penalty is what we also want to really focus on is being in debt. We've had cases in which debt goes up to 150,000 BD, and if not more. We have cases in which families have been shattered because of this. Because it is not strange to see a case in which you'll have a person who convinces another family member to give him authority to act on behalf of him, and then this person actually goes and rents the CRs on behalf of this. So you have multiple levels of concealment, and so the effects will be across all, more so on the person who owns the commercial CR, because as far as the ministry is concerned, whoever's name is on the commercial registration is the responsible person. So it's not only the penalties as per the law, it's also the other consequences that are so much more severe and huge that they can get themselves into.
Yeah, Mr. Nabras, before we go deeper into this this question, I want people to know, why is commercial concealment illegal?
Well, to know why it's illegal, we have to talk about the consequences. Number one, it can cause an economic imbalance because the government has determined what activities should be practiced by who, based on requirements, based on certain criteria.
Right.
And so if you somehow allow through concealment to break this rule, you're creating an imbalance and you're creating unfair competition.
Yeah.
And unfair competition is very detrimental on the overall economy, because it can also lead to a depreciation in the quality of products that are given to consumers.
Right.
As a ministry, we always have to look at all the different stakeholders in this relationship, and you're talking about not only the business owner but also the consumer, the suppliers, and so all of these will be affected when you have unfair competition and when you have depreciated qualities. Because if this spreads to an extent where, as a business owner, part of being hands-on means you'll innovate.
Right.
You not only compete on price, but you're competing in quality,
Yes.
where you will benefit from attracting more consumers, and the consumers themselves will benefit by having better products.
Yes.
But if you conceal and give it to someone who is not interested in innovation, rather more interested in just earning a satisfactory amount of money for him and just giving you a small amount of money, so then it will lead to lower standards of quality overall, and that in itself, it's illegal to do that. It can lead to cannibalization by having a certain group controlling the market.
Right.
And it can lead to overall lower standards of quality, lower standards of living, just because of having poor services and quality.
At some point, it is clear that commercial concealment can also be used for illegal activities that the person might not be aware of in different kind of fields. Is that something that's plausible?
Illegal activities can happen in any scenario.
Yeah.
But again, the consequences of having someone else doing that illegal activity on using your name,
exactly.
that's even more severe. The illegal activities in Bahrain have been defined,
Of course.
and so anyone practicing this activity, whether owning a CR, whether not owning a CR, is considered illegal. But if we talk about someone who owns a commercial registration, doesn't have his eye on his business, having someone operate on using his information, and that concealing person conducts an illegal activity, that again the spillover effect is on the commercial registration owner.
Yes, and that is the scary part. You mentioned in the beginning that when such a concealment happens, that there is a warning period, and after that action is taken. Can you roughly tell us that if a situation is not rectified, what is the time span between the warning and action after that? Well,
again, each situation requires the ministry to act in a different manner, but the law stipulated that he shall have a period of not less than a week. Yeah. So he has a week up until whatever the ministry sees fit for the person to correct the situation.
Depending on the situation that
Depending
has
on the
happened.
situation. And again, we're focusing on awareness.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of approach that we want to take with any initiative that we have, is to make people aware.
Yes.
We've been doing it with food trucks. We've been doing it with virtual commercial registrations. We've been doing with normal commercial registrations. We want to focus on awareness as much as possible.
Yes.
And especially at these times, you want to give people some kind of a breather to fix their situations. Again, they could have been put in that position without knowing.
Right.
And it's our role to do as much awareness as possible. That's why when you open up sijilat.bh, which is the commercial registration portal,
Yes.
managed by the Ministry of Industry, Commerce and Tourism, you'll see a pop message that talks about commercial concealment. We've been sending direct messages to business owners about commercial concealment. That's the direct approach. We also have an indirect approach, which, as you've mentioned earlier on, about the street signs.
Yeah.
That is a way of trying to show that we're all in this together.
Yes.
This is not only a relationship between the ministry or the government and the business owner. This also involves all these other stakeholders that I've mentioned, the consumers. Yeah. It's a joint effort. It's a Team Bahrain effort. Absolutely. We're all in this together. If something's illegal is happening that's affecting the country, then we're all in this together. So that's why we're trying different and multiple approaches to make the consumer and the commercial registration owner aware of the consequences.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for being with us today, actually, because this also is part of the awareness campaign that the Ministry of Information is collaborating with. So my next point is talking about this kind of awareness. People need to know that their rights are guaranteed. So what are the rights that are guaranteed to the business owners in relation to combating commercial concealment?
Well, number one, being the owner of the commercial registration means you have the right to make that decision. You're responsible to make that decision. You have the right of approaching the ministry and getting information. As a business owner, again, you're taking a risk. You should be aware of what you're getting yourself into. That means you are responsible to ask any concerned government entity about what is right, what to do, and what not to do. You also have the right to act and stop any illegal practice.
Right.
And so, you know, after all of these awareness campaigns, and this is going to be ongoing.
Yes.
And so the message is not only for the existing business owners, but for future business owners as well. We would like them to be aware that you have the right and you have the responsibility to make sure that you're running your business in an ethical manner, in a legal manner, and the ministry is there for them in case they have any inquiries, any clarifications. We are there to support them. We have a hotline. We can be reached by email directly. We can be reached through Tawasul. And at the same time, like we said, we're allowing business owners to approach and correct.
Yes.
Even like it is okay to come and admit that, yes, I have been concealing. I want to rectify the situation. I want to make things right.
Right.
And we will accept that. And we will help him in making things right. So, but number one is to be aware of the consequences. Number one is to be aware that if you're concealing, you're not doing the right thing. You're doing an illegal thing. And it is time from right now to make things right.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's not only the commercial registration that is at stake, it's your life as well.
Right, right. When it comes to commercial registrations, the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Tourism has opened up a lot of fields to basically have commercial registrations. And some of these fields are occupied by people that might not have as much awareness as others. They might have a gift, they might have a hobby or something that they're really good at, but they don't have the business know-how. So let's hypothetically imagine that people watching us right now are the family members of such a person. What are the indicators that that person is committing commercial concealment without any kind of knowledge?
Okay, so operating a business, when operating a business, there are different models. The truth of the matter is, you don't have to be involved in a day-to-day basis in the operations of the business. It is okay to run a business, employ someone to manage the business, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that you keep, you turn an eye away from the business. Again, you still need to be involved, and you still need to be supervised. So if today you're a family member, you own a CR, and someone else, whether legal or illegally, is managing our business, you just have to come to the sense that that at the end of the day, you're the responsible person.
Right.
And you should take action right now and somehow figure out a way to have a business model in which, I mean, if you don't have the capacity or time to run the business, have someone do it for you. The legal way is to actually employ that person.
Keyword employ. Yeah.
Exactly. You can employ that person. He does the day-to-day management and operations while you supervise from time to time. That's an acceptable model as long as that person is actually employed under you, under that commercial registration. So that would be like the legal approach to do it.
Right. So what is the importance of launching the campaign that you guys have launched? How do you value the cooperation with the ministry's partners and the Bahraini society?
Again, like I mentioned earlier, this is not only an initiative by the ministry, it's actually by the entire government, because when you have activities licensed by other entities. And we've really been having a very successful approach to this, because when there's a collaboration, it is easier to identify any concealment.
Yes.
So you'll have other entities that contact us and they tell us, look, we're suspicious about this shop. Can you please send inspectors to go and inspect and make sure that that there isn't any concealment in place, or is there a concealment in place? And so when you have this collaborative approach, it means you widen your scope, you widen the team players who are trying to combat concealment, and that has been very valuable to us, because instead of trying to operate in silo, you have these other entities that are coming together as one team, trying to combat something that's affecting the entire country. And again, I would like to stress on the point that, again, it's not only the government's role, it's every citizen's role, every resident's role in Bahrain to help in combating commercial concealment. So we will even, if there's a consumer that's suspecting that the certain shop is concealed, then the first approach would be to approach us or any other concerned government entity, and then we'll take action. And our role again is to approach that business, give them awareness, tell them what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right, how they can fix what they're doing wrong, and try to be legal and ethical at the same time.
How do they approach you? What are the contacts possibilities they have to approach the ministry?
We have a hotline. They can approach us. They have tawasul. And we can be approached. We can be approached by email, of course. And any of these channels, we have a dedicated team that that are operating these channels the whole time.
Perfect. You mentioned previously that commercial concealment has a drastic and devastating effect even on the economy of a country. So my questions to you, can you go more in depth in terms of facts and figures? What are the numbers like when commercial concealment is in a country, or does take over in some kind of way?
Well, if we talk about figures, it is kind of difficult to put an actual figure on, because if you're concealing, you're doing an illegal activity, which means we're not really sure exactly how much exactly concealment is going in, but we know it's there. But we can't put a definitive number on it. Because at the end of the day, the person concealing probably might not admit to actually doing it. But in terms of facts, let's say, for example, again, you're talking about giving it to someone that is not interested in innovating, is only interested in basically just selling, whether the product has expired, whether it's not. There is no, let's say,
ethics.
There's no ethics, exactly. So if that if the concealing person is operating an activity, and they're providing services and products to the market that are of poor quality. And especially when you talk about things that are hazardous to the health, that can affect people negatively, because you enter into the cases that you're selling an expired product, someone gets poisoned, and then all of these things are added costs, not to the person itself, but also on the government itself, because that's all you're trying to cover the mistakes that have been going on. And it's an entire cycle of trying to rectify all of these consequences, and there's an added cost to doing all of that of course affects the economy, because that though that money could have gone to somewhere else that could benefit the country. Instead, you're spending it on spending time to try and rectify the situation and all of that concealment.
Yeah. One thing that I do want to shed some light on is your inspectors, their training and how much experience they have, because that really does fit into how concealment is basically found, or how it is dealt with. You mentioned previously it depends on the situation. Again, because some people actually don't know that they're concealing, and some people have it worse. Tell us about your inspectors, how they're trained, what are the standards that they go by?
Well, I mean, we have a very, let's say, very competent and capable inspectors, and again, hats off to them, and we always have to thank them, because they are operation like 24 hours a day. Whenever there's a case, they would actually go and perform that inspection, and really they're doing all of us a favor, because it's not an easy task. No. It's not an easy task to go and try to inspect and identify whether there's some wrongdoing or there's some illegal activity. But it's, as much as it's difficult, they have been trained to do some simple approaches at first, because again, when you perform an inspection, the easiest thing to do is to actually try to get in contact with the CR owner and ask him about his business. And if he doesn't seem aware about anything that goes on in his business, that's like flag number one. Okay. And so then you trace those flags as you go along. The more you go into depth with the commercial registration owner, if there's any flags that have been raised, then you take it to the next level. You go and inspect the actual shop. You talk to the person actually working in the shop. Is he employed by the commercial registration? If not, then where did he come from? And so then you partner up with inspectors from other entities. Yeah. You get information from them. It's a very methodical approach, but you always try to, the way that they tackle it is that they try to go with the simple approach first, try to see if there's any flags are raised, until you reach to a decisive conclusion that yes, there is concealment. It's a tough job, because it's not like that everyone will come and say, yes, I admit that I've concealed. Yeah. But again, and we always stress this, even with the inspectors, that key thing is to be friendly with these business owners, because again, you don't know whether they've done intentionally or unintentionally, out of ignorance or not. In any case, the inspector's role is because they will deal directly with the owners. It is also their role to try to put some awareness and some sense into the business owners, and to make them understand that what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah. Well, before we come to the end of the show, we've mentioned You've mentioned a couple of things when it comes to spreading awareness about the campaign, about commercial concealment. You mentioned pop-up messages on the website. You've mentioned SMS, as well as, of course, the signs that we see on the highways that are already available. What else? How do you spread your message? How is the campaign spread even further through social media and different entities?
Yeah, well, again, one way of doing it is through this show.
Yeah.
And through the collaboration with the Ministry of Information Affairs.
Yes.
And like I said, this is an ongoing awareness campaign. It's never ending. It will continue to exist. Again, simply because we're not only addressing or targeting current business owners, but also future business owners.
Yes.
So this awareness has to continue. And it's going to be done through these kind of shows. It's going to be done through, again, social media.
Yeah.
I highly encourage, because again, almost everyone in this country now has Instagram or some form of another social media platform. And the ministry is on Instagram. Yeah. And through the accounts, through the ministry's account, we post many posts regarding new initiatives the ministry is doing, awareness, whether it's dealing with consumer protection, whether it's dealing with awareness about the commercial concealment. So I highly encourage them to follow the ministry's account to be up to date about what's recently going on. And again, the battle against illegal activities, it's going to be forever evolving. Yeah. And so they should always be aware of what changes happens. They should be also aware of the campaigns that we are that we're conducting, and there's no other easier way than just to access your phone and open up your social media account and see what initiatives and what campaigns that we are doing. And we have many informative messages that we send through those accounts. Like, you don't have to wait for the ministry to come and talk to you. You can actually find many of your answers addressed in these posts.
Yes, yes. Finally, before the end of the show, what are the future plans when it comes to awareness, or about any plans that the ministry might have in this regard?
Continue with the pop-up messages, the direct approach, where we target business owners. At the same time, we use other platforms such as collaboration, for example, with Bahrain Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We've previously done a joint public statement. It will be addressed, and like for instance, when somebody opens a CR, we're gonna have message in the system that inform him of and explain to him everything related to commercial concealment, so that he's aware. Yeah. But continue these joint efforts with other government entities, and again, go heavy on social media, because that's a direct approach, and also go heavy on collaboration with other government entities and other stakeholders, and do joint press releases, be part of conventions, to keep reminding business owners of the consequences of commercial concealment, and explain to them what the right thing to do and what not to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for explaining this sentence that isn't really vague, but people didn't know what was really behind it. Thank you for being with us.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah. And we'd also like to thank you, dear viewers, for watching us, and we'll see you next week in another episode of Inside Edition.